She said, "I've been hurt before." I replied, "Then let me be different." I noticed her before I knew her name. Noticing wasn't hard. The late afternoon cafe was empty except for the sound of spoons against porcelain, and she sat by the window like someone who'd claimed the light on purpose. Mid-40s maybe, dark hair pinned loosely, a small crease between her brows that didn't match the calm of her hands. I was wiping down the counter, pretending to be busy. She glanced up once and held the look longer than a stranger usually would. It was only a heartbeat, but something about it felt like a question. When she came to order, she leaned just slightly on the bar, not flirting, more like testing the wood's steadiness. Her voice was low, measured. "Chamomile, please." "Sure." My hands fumbled with the tea tin. The lid rattled louder than it should have. She noticed. A ghost of a smile curved at one corner of her mouth, not unkind. I brought the mug to her table instead of calling her name. The place was empty enough. Why make her stand? Steam curled between us. She slid her phone aside, making room. "You're new here?" she asked. 3 weeks. My voice came out softer than planned. Still figuring out which side of the counter feels less awkward. Another faint smile. She didn't fill the silence. She just looked at me like she was listening for something underneath the words. I shifted, ready to retreat, but she tapped the table once with her fingertip, an almost imperceptible gesture. "Sit, if you're on break." The chair opposite her was warm from the sun. I sat, more aware of my knees than I had ever been. She stirred her tea, though she hadn't added sugar, the spoon making slow circles. "You don't look like you belong behind a counter," she said. "What do I look like?" She tilted her head, eyes narrowing a little, like someone who asks too many questions. "I haven't asked one yet." That was one. Her smile deepened, but she looked down right after, as if the joke had gotten too close. We stayed like that, trading half sentences, glances, small pauses. When our hands reached for the same napkin, the back of her fingers brushed mine. A quick contact, but my skin felt it long after. She didn't pull away immediately. Outside, the sky shifted. A thin drizzle began, tapping against the window. The air smelled of wet pavement and chamomile. She lifted her cup, and I noticed her hand tremble just slightly before she steadied it. "I've been hurt before," she said quietly, like confessing to the tea rather than to me. The room went very still. My reply came before I thought about how it would sound. "Then let me be different." She inhaled sharply, not offended, more like she'd touched a cold surface. Her eyes met mine, not searching, but holding, as if weighing the weight of a boy's promise against the history she didn't name. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain grew louder. Somewhere a door clicked in the back room. She set her cup down, the porcelain soft against the wood. Then the cafe door opened behind me. A rush of cold air swept in, breaking the bubble of warmth. She glanced over my shoulder, her expression shifting, unreadable, caught between staying and retreating. I didn't look back yet. Her hand still rested near mine on the table, just barely not touching. And then she whispered, "You shouldn't," but left the rest hanging as the footsteps approached. The door shut behind me, and the rush of cold air faded. It was only another customer, but the spell had already shifted. She sat back, folding her hands around the mug as though she'd been caught doing something private. I stood halfway between leaving and staying, finally sliding back into the chair. "Sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure what for. She tilted her head. "Don't be." Her voice had gone lower, almost steady again. Silence pressed in. Outside, the drizzle had thickened. Drops clung to the glass like silver beads. I wanted to ask her everything at once. Why she looked so certain and yet so breakable. Why she wore that ring on a chain instead of a finger, but my throat felt too small. Instead I said, "You come here a lot?" "Only when it's quiet," she replied. "Too many people, and it's easier to hide." Her eyes flicked to the window, then back. She caught me looking at the chain. "Divorced," she said simply. "Years ago. One daughter, grown." "It's complicated." The way she said complicated wasn't bitter, just tired, like a room long left closed. I ran a thumb along the rim of my empty mug. "I get that." She smiled faintly. "Do you?" I nodded, but didn't explain. My own story, nights in a tiny apartment, no one waiting, wasn't worth spilling. Instead I asked, "Is that why you were hurt?" Her fingers tightened on the mug. "That's a story for another day." The words hung there, but she didn't move away. When she finally stood, she brushed by me, leaning just enough that her shoulder grazed mine. A soft jolt, warm fabric against my sleeve, the faint scent of rain and chamomile. I tried not to follow her with my eyes, but when she reached for her coat on the rack, her hand trembled a little. She slipped it on, then turned back. "You're young," she said, not accusing, more like testing how the word would sound. 24, I said. "Not that young." Her lips pressed together, like she wanted to smile but couldn't. "You don't know what 20 years means out there," she murmured, nodding toward the window. "People like to talk. I'm not people." The answer came out rougher than I meant. She froze for a second, then exhaled. When she stepped closer, the scent of wet wool clung to her. She reached to adjust the strap of her bag, but let her fingers brush my forearm. Not an accident, not quite deliberate. It was such a small touch, but it grounded me more than the chair. "I should go," she whispered, yet she didn't step back. The cafe had gone completely quiet except for the ring. Her eyes flicked down to where her fingers still rested against my sleeve. She didn't move them. We stood like that, her hand on my arm, my breath catching. A pause so full it felt like another world could fit inside it. Rain chased her back into the cafe the next afternoon. She hadn't planned to come. I could tell by the way she hesitated in the doorway, water dripping from her umbrella onto the mat. I was stacking cups. My hands went still. "You're here," she said softly, like a fact she hadn't meant to say aloud. "I work here." I tried to joke, but my voice landed somewhere else. Nervous, too warm. She moved to the same table, setting her bag down. Her hair clung damply to her neck. The smell of rain and perfume drifted across the counter. I brought her tea before she asked. This time, when I slid it toward her, our fingers touched, and neither of us pretended it didn't happen. She looked at the touch instead of me. "We shouldn't," she murmured. "I know," I said. "I'm still here." A silence thick as steam rose between us. She brushed at a droplet on her sleeve, not noticing her own trembling fingers. "You don't understand the noise this would make," she said, eyes on the window. "My daughter's age is closer to yours than mine." "People. I'm not people." I cut in, quieter this time. Her gaze flicked up to mine, and for a second she didn't look older, just startled. She opened her mouth, but a phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a name I didn't read fast enough. She silenced it with a single tap, then pushed it face down. "A colleague," she said too quickly. The rain outside quickened. Inside, every sound seemed louder, the tick of the clock, the hiss of the espresso machine cooling. I sat across from her. She didn't send me away. "Why do you keep coming back?" I asked. She exhaled a laugh without smiling. "I don't know if I'm looking for trouble or for a way out." My knee brushed hers under the table. She didn't move it. Her eyes fell to my mouth, then darted away. "I'm not supposed to want this," she whispered. "Do you?" Her lips parted. She leaned slightly forward, as if the answer might find its way to me without sound. Her breath reached my skin, faint warmth, chamomile, and rain. I mirrored the movement before I knew I was doing it. Our faces hovered close enough that a single word would have bridged the space. But the door swung open. A friend of hers, I recognized the woman from an earlier visit, stepped inside, shaking off an umbrella. The older woman flinched back, fingers retreating from the edge of the table. Her cheeks colored. She reached for her cup though it was still too hot. I stayed still, heart thudding. When her friend went to the counter, the older woman glanced at me under her lashes. Her knee brushed mine again, this time deliberate, hidden beneath the table. Her whisper barely reached me. "Later." It wasn't a promise. It was a pull, and it left us closer than before even as we sat perfectly still. The cafe had closed an hour ago. Chairs were stacked, the floor swept. Only one lamp glowed above the counter, making a small island of light. She'd stayed to help me lock up, though we both knew she didn't have to. I turned the key and heard the bolt click. The street outside was black glass with rain. She stood by the window, her coat folded over one arm. The faint neon from across the street lit her face in shards of pink and blue. "You shouldn't be here," she said, not looking at me. "I know." I walked closer anyway. "You stayed." Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't move. "I've been telling myself this is nothing, that it's harmless. But I keep coming back. I keep waiting," I said quietly. She turned then, eyes darker than the window behind her. "Do you know what you're asking? What it costs me?" I was close enough now to smell her perfume under the scent of rain, to see a single strand of hair fallen across her cheek. My hand lifted before I could stop it. Tell me to stop, I said. She didn't. I brushed the strand back, my fingers grazing her skin. Her eyes fluttered shut just for a heartbeat. When she opened them, something raw flickered there, not softness, but hunger edged with fear. My ex-husband was my age when he met me, she murmured. I was 23. I swore I'd never. Her voice broke, then steadied. You're the same age I was. That's not all I am, I said. Her laugh was small and painful. God, you're so sure. I'm not sure, I said. I'm just here. She leaned back against the window, palms flat against the cool glass, as if the building itself was the only thing keeping her upright. I stepped closer until my shoes touched hers. Our breaths mingled, fogging the pain behind her. I can't keep pretending I don't want this, she whispered. The words hit me harder than a shout. My hand slid down, finding her waist. She trembled but didn't push me away. You'll regret it, she said. Maybe, I whispered near her ear, my lips inches from her skin. But not tonight. Her head tipped forward until her forehead touched mine. Her hands hovered at my chest, not pulling, not pushing. Every heartbeat was a question. We stood like that, faces so close a tilt would have closed the space. Her fingers curled slowly into the fabric of my shirt. And then she drew a sharp breath, eyes flashing open. If we do this, she began. But the sound of a key turning in the outer door cut her off. Footsteps echoed in the entry. We both froze, her against the glass, me with my hand still at her waist, suspended on the edge of a moment that could no longer be undone. The outer door creaked open. We sprang apart instinctively, like the glass between us had gone hot. My hand fell from her waist. Hers slid from my shirt. A man stepped inside, holding a set of keys. Forgot my jacket, he muttered to himself, not yet looking up. He was the owner, my boss. I ducked behind the counter, heart hammering. She turned her back to him, staring at the window as if it might open. He grabbed his jacket from the hook and finally noticed her. Evening, he said. His eyes flicked from her to me. Late, huh? Yeah, I mumbled. Just closing up. The owner hesitated, then left without another word. The door clicked shut again. The silence he left behind felt heavier than his presence. She exhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her mouth. Her shoulders trembled once before she straightened. That can't happen again, she whispered, still facing the window. It didn't happen, I said, though my voice shook. She spun to face me. Don't be naive. He saw enough. Her cheeks were flushed, her pupils wide. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. He's my friend. He knows my daughter. He'll say something. I blinked. He knows you're. Yes, she cut in. That's how I found this place. Through her. She used to come here after school. She looked down, fingers knotting together. She's still in town. She'll hear about this before I can explain. The revelation hit, like cold water. Everything that had felt secret suddenly stood in a crowded room. You didn't tell me, I said. I didn't think you'd. She stopped herself. Her hands dropped to her sides, trembling. I didn't think we'd get this far. I stepped toward her anyway. And yet you're here. She backed up until the counter stopped her, the wood against her hips. My nearness pulled a shiver from her. She gripped the edge of the counter, as if bracing herself. I don't want to ruin your life, she said. You're not. My voice had gone low, rough. But you're in mine already. Her breath caught. She tried to look away but couldn't. My hand rose. Not to touch, but hovering near her face, a question she could still refuse. You're shaking, I murmured. So are you, she whispered back. For a moment we both stood on the knife edge of choice, our bodies leaning in, our heads tilting, the scent of her hair mixing with coffee and rain. Then she closed her eyes. If I stay, everything changes, she said. If I walk out now, maybe we disappear. The words hung between us like a door half open. She didn't move. I slid my palm against hers on the counter. She didn't pull away. And that was her answer. Not a kiss, not a yes, but the quietest decision, pulling us toward whatever came next. The cafe felt different with the lights low and the rain easing outside. Quieter, heavier, as though every sound landed on skin. She hadn't moved from the counter since I took her hand. Our palms stayed pressed together, not holding but not letting go either. You should go, she murmured. You don't want me to, I said. Her eyes flicked up at mine. You're too young to understand what this means. Then teach me, I whispered. My thumb moved in a slow arc over her knuckles. Her breath shuddered. She shook her head, but didn't step back. I built a life out of control, out of not needing anyone. And then you. She stopped, eyes closing like she could block me out. I stepped closer until our hips almost touched. And then me. Her lips parted. You make me feel 20 again and 40 at the same time. It's terrifying. A single tear slid down, but she caught it with her wrist before it fell. The smell of her hair, rain, tea, faint perfume, filled the small space between us. I lifted a hand to her face. Tell me to stop, I said again. She leaned into the touch instead, her cheek warm against my palm. I can't, she breathed. We stood like that, forehead to forehead, the counter digging into her back, my heart hammering against her hand. No one else in the world, just the sound of two uneven breaths. I'm afraid of what people will say, she whispered. I'm afraid of losing this before it even begins, I said. Her fingers slid up my shirt front, stopping at my collar. She gripped it lightly, as if to steady herself. Then we're both afraid. Yes. Silence expanded, thick enough to drown in. She tilted her head, eyes still on mine, and the air between our mouths turned warm. Every muscle in me wanted to close the distance, but something about her trembling kept me still. This isn't a game, she said. If I let this happen, it's real. I've never wanted a game, I said. A long pause. Then she exhaled, a soft sound like surrender. Then don't move. She rose the last inch herself, resting her forehead against mine again. Her nose brushed mine, her breath a question at the edge of my lips. We stayed suspended there, not a kiss, but everything that leads to one. Finally, she pulled back half an inch, eyes open and unguarded. I choose this, she said quietly. I don't know what happens tomorrow, but I'm here. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then so am I. Our foreheads touched once more, not a secret, not a promise, but a shared clarity. Whatever came next, we had stepped over the line together. Morning light spilled across the empty café like a secret no one had told. We'd stayed until dawn without meaning to, talking in low voices at a corner table after the storm passed. Her coat lay folded beside her, my apron draped over the chair. The place smelled of cooled coffee and rain-damp wood. We weren't touching at first. Our hands sat on the table a few inches apart, the space between them still charged. She looked out the window at the waking street, then back at me. I didn't sleep at all, she said softly. Me neither. I kept waiting to feel regret, she murmured, eyes dropping to her hands. It hasn't come yet. I turned my palm upward, slow enough that she could ignore it. She didn't. Her fingers slid into mine, fitting there like something long rehearsed. No performance, no hiding. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. We'll figure it out, I said. Her lips curved, tentative but real. Everyone will have an opinion. Let them, I replied. We're the only ones at this table. A small laugh escaped her, the kind you give when tension finally eases. She shifted her chair closer, knees brushing mine beneath the table. This time there was no flinch, no retreat. She leaned her forehead against my temple, not a kiss, but a quiet resting. Do you still feel 24? She asked. I thought about it. No. Right now I just feel here. Her hand squeezed mine once, then stayed. I needed someone to see me without looking past me, she said. I do, I said simply. Silence held us again, but it was a different kind now. Not sharp, not secret, just quiet. I stood and held out a hand. She let me pull her up. We stood between the tables, morning sun spilling over us. She brushed a strand of hair from her face. I caught her hand halfway and brought it to my lips. Not a grand gesture, just a small touch. She closed her eyes at the contact. When she opened them, there was no question left. She stepped into me, her arms slipping around my waist. I wrapped mine around her shoulders. We stayed like that for a long time, the street waking outside, the world waiting. You're shaking, I murmured. So are you, she said, but she smiled against my chest. We didn't talk about what would come next. We didn't have to. The space between us had finally disappeared. It felt messy, raw, human, and real. She drew back just enough to press her forehead to mine. We're here, she whispered. We're here, I echoed. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a question. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?